All right, everybody. How's it going? Hope you're all having a good evening or early evening, I should say. Um, you excited for this? Mr. Analog over here finally got his printer to work.
I did, yes. Printers suck, man. But I did get my printer to work. I actually printed out all the different Kraken permutations and the ways they can win because I want to mark it off like a bingo card. I'm way too excited for this, Dylan.
You
Way
are?
too excited.
I mean, it's an exciting thing. Like I remember when we did the live stream. Um, I guess it would have been like going into year two, the end of season one. What ended up being the Shane Wright lottery, so we thought, and how that all went down, and we had a fun time doing the live stream with this. I'm happy that we get to do this again, and I'm really intrigued to see how the NHL handles this, just because it's always been like fun and exciting to see the lottery results revealed, but I do feel like having something more than just cards being flipped over by Bill Daly is going to be nice.
Right. There's going to be a much more complicated dimension to this, too. I mean, it's the way the lottery always works, where they pick the four balls and there's 1,001 different permutations of the ways the numbers can work out. But as we find that out live, the odds adjust live, which is really interesting, I think, to me. And so teams' odds change based on the balls that are picked. And so, through 1, 2, and even 3, we'll know updated odds for the Kraken that could go up or down, or they could be out of it entirely based on how the balls are picked. And so we're going to try and keep up with those as best as we can. I'm curious what kind of stuff the broadcast has. I've heard that after they pick the third ball, they'll show the adjusted odds and like what number each team needs, which I think is really cool. So you can kind of root for a number on a specific draw if you're a team, which we haven't ever really had that before.
Right.
But I'm going to try and keep track through 1 and 2 draws as well. And the quick things to know for the Kraken, you want low numbers. Like low numbers help the Kraken. Like they've got a lot of ones. I think 7 is their most common number, but anything like 8 to 14, we don't want, but 1 through 7 is really good.
Lucky number 7. All right. Can do there. Are they doing pick first overall first and then the draw for second overall?
Yes, they are doing that. And so is another rule to know as well. So they're going to do the draw for first overall, and that's going to happen. And then the second draw, they're going to do it again for the second overall pick. If it's the same team that won the first overall pick, then they just redraw. So they might have to do more than 2 draws on this thing, but they're going to do multiple draws. So first one first, second one second.
Yep. As the broadcast has kicked off, and there is our little lottery machine. Look how magnificent it is, RJ. It's so magnificent.
It is. Look, it's all clear, and you can see all the balls that are going to go in. It's going to be great.
It is.
I'm way too excited for this.
I know. No, it's good. I'm super pumped about it as well. Really looking forward to seeing just how things shake out, and I mean, just there's so many interesting things that can happen here. I just kind of want. Obviously, I want the Kraken to win it, but I also just want another year of like a team further down winning it and jumping up. You know what I mean? Like it's just more exciting that way. That's the whole point of the lottery, right? If the bottom team finishes and gets the first pick,
Yeah, no, I'd be okay with a team that's a little bit lower jumping up. It adds some excitement, especially in a draft year where there's not a clear consensus number one. We're not talking about generational players here. There are maybe 3 or 4 different players that could go off the board at first overall, depending on which team has the pick and who they like. So I think that adds another element of cool randomness to it.
Yeah, if you talk to the NHL scouts and stuff, it sounds like they've really narrowed it down to Schaefer and Misa, and then it's kind of positional. But yes, there's certainly like 3 or 4 players that feel like they can make a substantial difference for the franchise that drafts them. Now we do have a super chat here from Schultz. Really appreciate the super chat. Not expecting those tonight, but appreciate it, Schultz. Hey guys, how's your off season going? It'd be nice to get some off season progress, even if it's not about coaching candidates or a Kakko extension. I forgot that we haven't had a Kakko extension, and we get a look at all the general managers there. There's Jason Botterill. Maybe move up Botterill. What's with the wide angle lens there on Botterill in the Kraken locker room?
They really want to show off that locker room. I think that's the key.
Yeah. But to get back to the super chats, it'll be. I like I said, I forgot about the extension there. 32 Bar and Grill watch party on ESPN.
Oh, nice! Well. Look at that.
It looks like there's space there if anybody wants to head on down. Doesn't look too crowded at 32 Bar and Grill there. But fun that the Kraken get to make the big board there on the broadcast.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, yeah, it's the offseason. I feel like for me though has actually been busier than I would have expected, given the management changes, going to the presser for that, the PWHL announcement, which is really cool. We both got to go to. So I think we've been busier than we thought, and I've been fighting off a cold the last few days. Today's really the first day I feel good enough to do anything. So good timing for this.
Yeah, no, we've it has been busy. I think that's been good. We'll maybe we'll start hearing about coaching interviews or something soon. But yeah, I'm happy with how the off season has gone so far with all the Kraken related stuff. I'm actually out here in Gig Harbor at my grandparents' house because my grandma broke her leg, so down here helping out with things like that. It's we're having as good a time as we can when a 90-year-old breaks a leg.
Yeah, that's not ideal there. I see it from Johnny Chaz. I hope Stanley comes back to announce who gets the first pick. Dylan, did you see that animated video the NHL put out explaining everything?
I hated that so bad.
You don't hope Stanley comes back to
I
announce?
do not hope Stanley comes back for this. AI generated Stanley. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. The eye lines were what did it for me. Like it was like obvious AI and everything, but it was the lack of like a centered eye line was just so rough to see.
Yeah. Although I did like that they chose for a draft lottery thing. The shoulders were orange, just like Oilers jersey shoulders, which, those are really the draft lottery masters.
Yeah, I do like.
Just had Taylor Hall do that.
The generative AI could only imagine that scenario.
Yes. You don't blink.
Yes, did not. And appreciate the well wishes there, Maddie, as well.
Yeah, we got the Calder finalists.
Yeah.
So what was it? Wolf, Hudson, and Celebrini?
I think so. I missed it.
Yep, I just got the email from the league. Yep.
Okay.
So Sean asking who wins the Calder? I think it's got to be Lane Hudson, right?
Yeah, I think he pulled ahead enough there that's what it's going to end up being.
Yep. So we'll see on that, but I think Hudson's got the edge.
Yeah.
But love the competitive Calder race, as we talked about on regular for the first time in a while.
Yeah, no, it's been really nice. Otherwise, yeah, it seemed like as all the award candidates were coming out, it really felt like all the ones that we thought were going to happen were just there. Like that's just all it was.
No big surprises. So Dylan, they're talking about the different prospects. You've got Higgins, you've got Schaefer here. They've talked about. I mean, I think we'll get to it a little bit later too if the Kraken do win. But like, real quick thoughts if they do get the first overall pick. Do you have a definite direction you want to see the Kraken go?
I mean, in my mind, it is between Michael Misa and Matthew Schaefer. Like, I think that they have separated themselves from James Higgins, from Porter Martone, from, insert name of other prospect you like here. And at that point, I think it really comes down to, I guess, positional preference, right? And so you're talking about a center in Michael Misa, or maybe he has to switch to wing. Don't know, but I think that it would be interesting to kind of see where the Kraken decide to go from there.
Yeah,
I don't know. Schaefer's D that are going to be top pairing defensemen. Sorry, I had to fix my stream there. That's why I was kind of like
you're good.
Not totally there. Defensemen that are going to be a top pairing defenseman for you, that can contribute offensively, that one day are going to be able to munch 25, 30 minutes in a playoff game. I just think that that's so rare. Like every year it feels like, at the top of the draft, there's a centerman who can come in and, potentially turn into a point per game player and lead your offense and all of that kind of stuff. And I know ideally the Kraken won't be picking this high for a while, but I just feel like Matthew Schaefer, what he can do with the puck, the positional value that he has as a defenseman, it's probably too much for me. So I think if the Kraken end up picking first, I'd probably go with Matthew Schaefer, even though I do feel like long-term, like maybe having that offensive stud up front might benefit the Kraken a little bit more to build around. It just feels like when there's a defenseman as good as Matthew Schaefer, you have to take him.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, my philosophy is don't worry about position, just pick the best player available, and I think that is Schaefer from what I've seen. I think Misa maybe benefits what the Kraken might need in the long run more. I mean, if Misa is that stud, just like 1C type of forward, right? then I think that is more valuable if that's what he turns out to be than what Schaefer is going to turn out to be. But I'm a lot more confident in Schaefer kind of reaching that ceiling of being one of those elite difference maker type of players.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Time to get started. Who is this? All right. Unclip the ping pong ball briefcase. Let's go.
I was gonna say, I think you're a tiny bit ahead of me, but
okay. Sorry.
I mean, he's unclipping it now for me.
Okay, so he's brought the ping pong balls over to Gary Bettman, who's showing them off here.
I mean, so what's interesting is that the NHL would always do this behind the scenes, and the video would always have this stuff, but it was always just so much more casual.
Yeah. Johnny Chess, who's taller, Bettman or the ball machine? It's close.
It is close. Not gonna lie. And Jessica, the serious faces are hilarious. They take this so seriously.
They really do, yes.
I do always love how they have to show the ball, and Gary Bettman has to say what the number is on the ball.
Confirm 9. What's it going to be next? 10. All right, next one, Dylan. What do you think?
Oh man, can we get a film student review of this shot framing? How long do you have, Zach? Do you really want this? I'll get into the lighting and everything. Over under, I don't know. Actually, I'll give you 2-1 odds, RJ, that at some point Gary Bettman refers to the balls as percolating.
Percolating.
Yes. He has on the last 2 years, I believe.
Okay, well, all right. That's
videos what they did
like
it.
All right. Start the clock. All right. There's a clock.
Now, what's interesting is in years past, it's been 20 seconds per pick of the ball. I think they've extended this for this. And in the past, Commissioner Bettman has had to be the one to kind of narrate and say everything that's going on. Because they have Buchagras, I don't know that he will say that they're percolating.
Probably not. 1. All right, so we're getting a ball here. We want low numbers. That is a best case scenario for the Kraken here. 28 possible permutations here with 7 in it for the Kraken. Best case.
Let's go.
Live odds up to 9.8% now as they're showing. Cool, they're showing the odds here.
Oh, this is sick. Yeah.
This is great. See, I love this, right? Calgary is out too, so we know that. Yeah, isn't this awesome?
Yeah. Oh yeah, look at how big the Kraken jumped over like Boston there.
Yes. So the 7 is huge. Best case scenario for Seattle here. Now,
I was gonna say, as you're reading the list, do we have
3 would be excellent? I think a 3 or a 4 is what we're looking at here.
Is there anything we don't want?
I think like 9 or 13 we do not want.
Okay.
Ooh, that's also pretty good, I think. We'll see. 7 and 11.
Yeah, ball number 2 is an 11. All right, 7, 11.
So see the odds up to 10.6%. This is really good. Kraken now have
tied with Philadelphia.
Tied with Philly for the second highest odds. Yeah.
No, in the third spot behind.
Oh, in the third spot. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Behind San Jose and Chicago.
I'm looking at the different ones here.
Yeah. To answer Maddie's question, how do they send a ball up the tube at a specific time? They have like a little button that creates like a brief moment of suction or something that sucks up a ball up that middle tube there. I don't know more than that.
All right. So 1, 2, 3. So 6 possible options the Kraken have here is 12. Okay. Okay, so a 3 on the next draw would mean the Kraken win.
Okay. Is that
7, 11, wait, it's 7, 11, 12 are the numbers we have, right?
Correct. 7, 11, 12. Kraken have a 9.1 chance, which is tied with San Jose and Buffalo.
So they need a 3. A 3 is what they need. That's a 3 wins it for Seattle, and that's the only number, I believe.
Okay.
Yep, there it is. They put it on the thing.
Yeah.
So a 3. We want a 3.
Several teams
Exciting.
Several teams with 2 options, including Pittsburgh and the Islanders at 9 and 10 best odds going into this. This is
Yeah.
good. This is fun.
I love this format. This is so much better. Oh, there. Yep. There it is. What was the percentage odds for the Kraken that they have?
9.1.
Okay.
And when you say, because there's lots of people only listening to us, RJ, when you say there it
Okay.
is, you have to clarify what it is you're talking about.
Yes. Yep.
So clarify what you were saying there it is for. This is a commercial break.
Yeah. Oh, the commercial break. Yes, they're going to commercial. Of course, they're drawing out the suspense here. Sorry
However,
about that.
they do have a live cam on the lottery machine
Yes.
as the remaining balls are percolating.
Here we
Gary
go.
Bettman would like to say. So, no, you know what? I'll take the commercial here. I don't care.
I know. I like it too. It's too much to keep up with, but like now we get to settle in for a second.
Yeah. Come on, Ron, slide them a milli. Jeremy.
Yeah.
I know, Draybird. It is kind of crazy that the Pens could win. It's a year too early.
Still in it. Yeah.
It's a year too early for the Penguins. Penguins are getting Gavin McKenna next year.
God, you're right. But
is this more or less exciting than the baseball draft? It's more exciting, for sure. And I just want to take a moment to say hi to everybody, and thanks for joining us for this live stream. Over 500 people in here with us.
Oh,
right
wow.
now.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
Great stuff.
Especially with the lack of notice too. I appreciate that. Like,
yeah.
Put this out kind of late. I wasn't sure if I'd be feeling up to it, but I'm so glad I was.
Yes. Daniel, 3 is the magic number. Always been good for Seattle. Russell Wilson, Will Borgen. There we go.
The 2 goats of Seattle sports.
Yes. Gary, this is way better than any other iteration of this process. Like, why have they not been doing it this way the entire time? I would like to know the same thing, Gary. Other than it's not as a controlled environment and the day and age of sports betting or something, maybe they just didn't know.
Betting app didn't let Carl bet on the numbers. Interesting.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of get it.
Yeah, you don't want that. Yeah.
Trish, I just tuned in. What's our status? The Kraken are alive. There's one ball remaining to be pulled for the first overall pick. The Kraken's number for that ball, there's 14 balls, 1 through 14. And if it comes up a 3,
there's 11 balls left.
Yeah, that's true.
So 1 out of 11, basically.
Yeah. But yes, otherwise we are stuck at commercial waiting to see what comes up. And as Earhead 6 is pointing out, 3 is a magic number, Schoolhouse Rock. Ask your folks. I have seen it. I do know. But I mean, it's 1 out of 11, 9.1%. I take those.
It's higher than their odds going into it.
It is. And it is kind of fun watching them percolate, because like, searching for the number 3 ball and hoping that it like is vaguely around.
Yeah, see if we can find it in there.
Yeah.
We have the GMs.
Yep.
Hungary. Kyle Dubas in Hungary. Interesting. Yeah, Penguins with two balls here. Options like Penguins. Yeah.
Penguins, Chicago, New York Islanders, and the Philadelphia Flyers all have 2 options.
Yeah.
The Sharks, Kraken, and Buffalo have 1.
All right. Okay, so 30 more seconds. Let's go.
Oh, of course.
I'd love for them to put no, give us the full screen of this, or at least put which teams have which balls, because I didn't memorize it just there. Put that in a little window on the side if you could. All right, everyone try and locate the 3 ball. I would love for them to show us a slow motion of the ball going up. Because remember that one year where the ball knocked out the other ball?
Yeah.
With the COVID drawing?
Yes.
Oh, I see a 3, but it's a 13. Oh,
bummer.
Man, the 3 was there.
The 3 was there.
13 was the number that had the fewest amount of permutations for the Kraken, by the way. 13. If that had been the first ball, their odds would have gone way down. So which team had that?
Oh,
it wasn't the Sharks.
Doing their quadruple, triple checking. But
The Islanders.
jeez.
Okay, they are being rewarded by the hockey gods for getting rid of Lou.
I was just gonna say this is all about them getting rid of Lou Lamoriello. That
yeah,
holding on to
you
him
know
as
what?
long
Hey,
as it was banked them the
what they get.
karma.
Yeah.
All right, so Andrew immediately asking, does that drop us to 7? It would drop us to 7 at the moment. However, they are now going to do a draw for second place.
Yes. So that's the thing.
So-
Either are they? Can the Kraken only be second or seventh at this point?
Unless, say, the Penguins win, in which case the Kraken could get pushed to 8.
Oh yeah,
right?
7th, 8th, or 2nd. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's right. Yep.
So those are now the three spots that the Kraken can get locked into.
Cool. All right. How many? Oh, well, okay. At least we don't know there probably won't be another second lottery drawing because what the odds the Islanders win again?
Yeah, I was gonna say there's pretty low chances that the Islanders should win again. All right.
All right. So
So
we do this again now.
Got to do an interview with the Islanders first, of course, though.
Honestly, okay. Here's the thing. I feel like the odd. It feels like there's a lot less tension here with the second drawing, but really for the Kraken, like I don't know that there's a huge difference between first and second.
I don't either. So I thought that kind of going into today. I was low key. I was like, look.
Wait. So was a 1 just picked as the first number for the second draw? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So that's good for the Kraken. That's their second highest number. Like that's
Okay.
their second best number. So this is great, actually. So there's
Yeah.
27 different permutations here with a 1. For the
Okay.
Kraken.
That feels pretty good.
Yeah.
It's really odd that they're doing the second draw while doing an interview. This I don't.
I know this I don't like
I
either.
haven't
Yeah.
liked.
Give us the full attention here.
Yeah.
So yes, a 1 is good for us. Yes. A 1 is good.
Do we know?
So remember 1, 2, 3, 4 is an option that they have as well. 5. All right. Well, that one's out.
Bummer. I was just going to say, what numbers would mean that the Kraken are out?
With a 1, there's few number. I think.
I mean, it sounds like the 5 does it though.
The Kraken are not out with 5. So 1 and 5. Hang on. I'm looking.
Oh, okay, the Kraken are still in.
Oh yes, very much so. Yeah, no.
Oh, okay, okay. What you had said made it sound like no. So.
Well, no, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4 was out. I meant. I
Okay.
just said like 1, 2, 3, 4. They have. Well, 5 means they're not. So the Kraken have 5 different possibilities that are still on the board here.
Okay.
So you want a 2 or a 4 would be ideal here. 12.
It is 12.
Kraken are out. Yeah, they cannot win this.
Damn. And
So
on
the
a
Kraken will
2,
pick
you said
7th and 8th.
you said a 2 helps, and it gave us a 2 in the form of a 12. It's like the 3 would help.
Yes, in the form of a 13. So the Kraken are out.
Okay. So now we're just waiting to see if the Kraken are going to pick 7th or 8th, depending on.
So we want a high team to win this.
Yes, we want one of the teams ahead of the Kraken to win, so that the Kraken can lock in at pick number 7.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can see they're knocked out here. So Utah and Calgary, I believe, are the only teams that could. Yeah, so Utah and Calgary are the only teams. What balls do they need? I don't have that.
I mean, they should, in theory, only need 1 ball each.
Yeah, I know. Like that's the thing. Which 1 ball do they need? So Utah.
Wow. If the Islanders
3 or 9, we don't want 3 or 9.
Yeah.
Of course, now would be the 3, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. And just for people, you can only jump up 10 spots. If Calgary or Utah was to win this lottery draw, they would move up 10 spots, but that would still not put them at second in the draft order.
Yeah.
Because they're further back at 14 and 16. So we will see in about 20 seconds here.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it can still be a redraw, Mason, because the Islanders.
No, the Islanders are out. Yeah.
So.
Oh, what is it? Of course, it's the 3.
Oh, are you kidding me?
So they dropped 2 spots.
Oh. So basically the worst case scenario.
Yes, it is. Well, so I guess they, I mean, you look at the draw, so maybe they didn't win enough.
He didn't win enough.
Close out the season.
You know, when we started this broadcast and I said that I wanted teams further down to win this year, I didn't mean team 10 and 14.
I know. Well, hey, you asked for it.
I did ask for it. That is on me. So Utah moves all the way up to pick number 4.
Yeah.
San Jose will pick 2nd. Chicago will pick 3rd.
Yeah. And then what? Nashville 5th.
Yeah, it should then go Nashville, Philly, Boston.
Philly, Boston, then Seattle.
Then Seattle.
That's number 8.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I really didn't think they were going to pick 8th.
I didn't either. I did
this
not.
This is the second least likely scenario for the Kraken, aside from that weird, 0.2% chance that they picked 3rd.
Yes.
And Vyren, I said, Vyren did push back on that late teams winning.
Yeah, true. Look, in most years, the Kraken would be considered a late team. We do not see things like this happening all the time.
But Dylan, though, let's talk about the draft in the 8th spot here. I mean, of all the years, right? How does this one rank as far as, disastrous versus actually not so bad to fall 2 spots from 6th to 8th?
Yeah, I don't think it's that disastrous. I think that, we've spent a lot of time talking about kind of the top 4 picks in this draft. There's then a very clear class of, 5 to 6 players after that, in my opinion, that more or less are going to just come down to who teams value more. I think that there's a lot of arguments to be made on how you would rank those players in that next tier. This is the tier of, I've already seen people talk about Jackson Smith. I think Jackson Smith's in there. I think that Roger McQueen's in there. I think Carter Bear is in there. For me, I'm spacing on the Q centerman.
Oh, Denway.
Denway is in there.
Yeah.
Victor Eklund is in there. Anton Frundell is in there. So there's still good options, and it means, just rattling off those names that I have, it means that the Kraken are going to end up with one of those players. So I think that that's still a good thing for the Kraken. I think it's going to be interesting because it's very possible that 2 or 3 of those players is going to be on the board for the Kraken, and we'll kind of see for the first time Jason Botterill what he values in a draft prospect. Does he go for high upside skill? Does he go for size? Does he go for positional value? Maybe with the Jackson Smith on the blue line. I think it's going to be really interesting to see when he has to make a decision between 2 or 3 of that group where he ends up going. But all of those players are going to be players that are going to be NHL players of some degree. I think you're talking more so about second line forward potential rather than first line. And, with a Jackson Smith, you're talking about maybe top pairing defensive ability, but more in that number 2 mold, or more realistically, kind of like a 3 on a team. But one that moves the puck really well and is that great secondary option for you. So it's going to be really interesting. I'll have tomorrow when we record the deep dive, I'll really kind of go more into depth and kind of maybe rank them. But I do think that the Kraken are going to get a player that is known, talked about, valued highly, picking at 8 this year, similar to last year when they got a Berkeley Catton.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you can pick a player, and there's some good players on the board, but I see many people in chat asking, what about trading the pick? I do think it falling down to 8 kind of opens up the trade possibilities a little more if you do want to go get an established player. I think with it going down to 8, this pick is in play now, or it certainly should be.
I think it will be. What will be interesting is, I'll ask you this, if you're GM, does it do you feel like the pick is only going to be traded if there's a team that wants a specific player that's still on the board, right? Some teams in love with Victor Eklund. Victor Eklund's on the board for you at 8. It's probably not going to drop down. He's probably not going to drop down to 10 or 11 for them. So a team like, whoever's picking in there now, because the Islanders and Utah leapfrogged everywhere. Do you think that do they value him enough to move up into that spot? Like, that to me is kind of the scenario it would take for us to realistically see a trade out of the top 10.
I think the fit is actually going to work the other way. Instead of a team wanting that pick and who they could potentially draft with it, I think any trade that would come together around that pick would be about a specific player that's an NHL type player that the Kraken would want to add, probably a top 6 winger that would be available and would be so valuable that you would need to throw that pick in as kind of part of the package to go get that player. And so I think the fit would really be on the other side, where that's just an asset that the Kraken have of a certain value, where they don't really have a whole lot of assets that are in that exact value. And so if you're trying to trade for a really valuable, maybe forward piece to kind of add to your goal scoring, that's the kind of piece that could be on the table. And then the team that would get that pick would not necessarily be interested in one specific player in that range, but be like, man, we could get whoever at number 8. And it's just, where you're trading an established player for a valuable future piece.
That is the benefit of there being that many prospects that are going to be in that conversation in that range, that yes, teams can be like, well, we like 2 or 3 of these guys. One of them is going to have to be there if we pick 8th. Let's go ahead and make this move. So yeah, I do understand where you're coming from there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. So, and then as far as I see Carl asking about maybe we trade up, it is just so rare that trades in the top 10 happen in the NHL draft. I believe the last one is 2008. So a long, long time ago. Those trades just generally don't happen. And especially this year, I really can't see the Kraken trading up with this pick.
Yeah, with this draft being so top heavy, I just don't see any of those teams already locked in now to say the top 4 or 5 wanting to give that up.
Yeah, they're staying where they are.
Yeah, they know they're getting
all 4 of those teams. I'd be shocked to see them move.
Yeah, you would have to give them basically a player of equivalent value to these top guys, and then you're talking about like Shane Wright maybe being your only option as a trade asset in that conversation. And I don't think
we want to do that. Yeah, anyone wants to do that. Yeah.
Byron, does this pick even have that much value if the draft is that weak? I don't know. I think a top 10 pick is always going to be a top 10 pick. I think it's one of those things where a general manager, if they're in a place where they're going to be valuing picks in a current draft, they don't care so much whether or not if the draft itself is that weak. I think it's one where they're like, I'm in this job and maybe I need to just make more first round picks, have more prospects, because that buys me more time in my current position, rather than say strictly valuing the draft. I think it's one of those things where when the draft is exceptionally strong, it increases value. But I think in years like this where the draft isn't as strong, I don't know that it decreases top 10 pick value as much.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's in this range, it's probably still more or less about the same. Like, I think teams just kind of view it pretty similarly. I mean, did we already talk about this? I'm sorry, Dylan. It was kind of part of the first question, but I'm just curious, from 6 to 8, like how big of a difference is that in terms of not just like the players you could draft, but just value even in the trade market or whatever? Because I see some comments about like tanking harder, and especially on like Twitter, I see people should have tanked harder. Realistically, the hardest they could have tanked, at the very end would be like 1 fewer point, which would drop them, which would, move them up from 8 to 6, knowing the results of the lottery. Like, how big of a difference actually is that?
That's only a big difference if one of the teams in front of you wants to really take a swing on like a Roger McQueen. Right, like that.
Even then, you'd need 2.
You would need 2, and that's part of it. So, like, I don't know that it really ended up mattering for the Kraken. The fact that Utah was able to jump up the way that they were kind of took that out of the equation. Where, like,
I think there's a big difference from like 5 to 7 or 8, but maybe not 6.
Yeah, you had to tank to levels where you were basically throwing games at this point if you were the Kraken to get to that spot.
Yeah, and no, because with knowing how Nashville finished, you kind of had to finish ahead of or behind Nashville, I guess, looking at it, and that would have been tougher than just the 1 point here or there.
Right, and I do want to mention what Zach had said, and I was going to bring this up too. The pick still has value because you are still drafting a almost for sure NHL player in this draft, and that is true. Like, as much as the high end guys are limited to 4 or 5 prospects at the very top, all of those other names I mentioned are going to play in the NHL. Like they are going to be NHL players. They're going to still be top 6 forwards. They're still going to be a top defenseman in the case of Jackson Smith for you. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh my gosh, this is like the worst. This is a disaster scenario for the Kraken just because they're missing out on somebody that they realistically didn't have a shot at, just because they weren't that bad. You're still getting an NHL player here. This is part of how evaluating prospects works. And if you're looking at teams' prospect pools, or if you're looking at a draft class, there is only ever going to be a handful, a very small amount of players each draft class, or very small amount of players in a prospect pool that you're going to look at and give that highest grade to, that top line player, that point per game player, that superstar level grade to in any draft class. This is very normal that, say, picks 5 through 10 are going to just be, good players, above average players, still, like I said, very good players, top 6 players, but they're not going to turn into the next superstar. Now, they always have that chance. Like, you still have that upside. It's just less likely that you're going to achieve it. But like, this is a very normal type of thing. We've seen in the last couple of years at various times some extremely stacked draft classes that have kind of made it seem like this one is more ho-hum. But I would say this one is more in line with what a traditional draft ends up looking like. And look at how many teams are able to build, good rosters out of picking players in these top 10s. I still think the Kraken are going to get a good prospect, somebody who's going to walk into their prospect pool and immediately be a top 3 prospect for them, probably, especially depending on how you view prospects and like games played and all of that stuff. This is going to be somebody who's going to slot in there right up there with like Berkeley Catton for top in the organization. So this is not, it's not a bad thing that the Kraken are, only picking 8.
Yeah, and interesting, I noticed, I'm just looking at the history of 8th overall picks, and I see, over the last 12 years, so just littered with the Buffalo Sabres logo, with the Sabres having 4 8th overall picks in this time. Only one of them made by Jason Botterill, though. I think that's interesting. He was kind of bookended on either side by picks he did not make, in Alex Nylander and Jack Quinn, that didn't turn out very well, but he didn't make those picks. I think might have had the best of the 4 actually with Casey Middlestat, oddly enough. But it's just some interesting, players that were taken there. I mean, you've got, I'm looking at probably best case, Zach Werenski, probably the best. William Nylander also, two 8th overall picks that turned out very good in 2014, 2015. Sean Couturier there as well. So, you can definitely hit on that higher end upside, like, Werenski, Nylander, Couturier, you take that outcome any day.
Right. Top 10 prospects are still top 10 prospects, right? Like all the difference that separates them from the guys higher up is the, percentage chance that they do hit and hit that high end upside. Right. And a lot of that can also just come into the organization that's developing them. Right. Like there's a reason that some organizations that pick super high every year, even though they're picking the guys that have the better chance of becoming a superstar, they never end up becoming superstars because the organization doesn't know what they're doing with them. I think what the Kraken have proven is they do kind of know what they're doing when it comes to prospects. Look at the amount of second round picks that this Kraken group has been able to develop and turn into really good AHL players already. We've already seen people like Yanni Newman come up against second round pick they've developed over the last couple of years, able to make an immediate impact at the NHL level in a middle 6 role, has the potential for more as he continues to grow and should be a full-timer next year. This is an organization that knows what they're doing. I think that that's going to help whatever player they pick at 8, just like with Berkeley Catton last year. They're going to make sure that they develop properly and that they're going to turn into a very usable and not just usable, but good player for them, long term.
Yeah, and I do like the Kraken's ability to develop these players and such too. I do look at, again, with how many Sabres logos there are on here, and just how poorly they developed. I think a lot of these players, where some of these guys like a Casey Middlestat, who I think was rushed, probably could have turned out better as well. So development is so important too. It's not just picking the guy and he is who he is from age of 18. Development's really important, and the Kraken have shown they can be good at that. Right.
And Andrew bringing up, Ty Karche being an undrafted player that they turned into an NHL regular, and they did that in 1 year. You know what I mean? So this team definitely knows what they're doing there. And, keep in mind, Jason Botterill was part of that process. He's now the general manager. That's going to be a big thing. But having, Tambellini still around in that player development position that he's in, I think is going to be big for the Kraken. A couple more things that I just want to hit at real quick. Draybird asking, did the 2023 draft mess with our perception of draft classes for a bit? It did. And that's why so many people were making such a big deal out of that draft class, was because it was the deepest draft basically since 2015. Like it was a once, I would argue it was deeper than 2015 too. It really felt like a once in a generation draft. It was arguably the most, the deepest draft since 2003, that 2023 class. And I do think that it being so early in the Kraken's life cycle for a lot of NHL fans, I do think that maybe it would be one where I could see it kind of messing with perception a little bit on the level of prospects you can get further down in a draft or at the top of a draft. And then Paul asking, where would Catton be in this draft? I do think Catton would be pretty high in this draft. I do think Catton would be probably higher than 8th. I think you're talking more like top 5 for him. Oh, did you mute yourself?
Oh yeah, I guess I accidentally did. Sorry. I was thinking maybe right outside the consensus top 4, so maybe like in that 5 or 6 area.
I think so too. Yeah, I think he would be slightly ahead of where he's at this year. Some of that last year was just having so many defensemen because of that positional value, having people like a Carter Yakimchuk that's going to be taken before pick 8. It's not probably going to happen this year. So I think some of that, is what pushed him to 8 last year even.
Yeah. And then Light, would you trade the 8th for Natchez to the Avs if he agreed to be willing to sign an extension? Avs pool got crippled by trading Ritchie. I don't think there's any way the Avs would do that. I would certainly do that from the Seattle perspective easily. It would take a hell of a lot more than the 8th pick. But yes, in short.
Yes, definitely. All day, every day. Sean, will you guys be doing a live playoff game watch with us? We will be for Patreon. We're going to get together on our schedule for May tomorrow when we do deep dive and talk about all that stuff. So we will have more news for that soon. Zach, all the recent reporting is that NHL teams are all over the map in terms of grading guys 3 for 10. Honestly, likely we get someone at least a couple of spots over 8 on our board for sure. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's a big jumbled mess outside of kind of the consensus 2, and then everybody else kind of has a next consensus 2 or 3, and then everybody else has their own rating for guys kind of after that. It's very possible that we're going to get one of those guys that some teams value in that top 3 or 4 range fall to us at 8 just because of what it is. The best place I think to look for this, and I was going to bring this up tomorrow on the deep dive as well and kind of point people in this direction, is every year Bob McKenzie at TSN goes and he talks to scouts and general managers and heads of scouting and all of that kind of stuff. And he puts together a ranking based off of the inside information that he's able to get from those people. And he put out the end of season version of that a couple days ago, 4 or 5 days ago. And that's basically what it ended up showing. NHL teams pretty universally agree that Schaefer and Bisa are at the top 2. But after that, you saw a very wide range of how they ranked out the rest of the top 10, essentially. And so, again, this is not a bad spot for the Kraken to be in. I think the fact that you're picking 8th and you're still going to have a choice if you're the Kraken, I think is a very positive thing, because that's not always the case if you're picking at 8. But like I said, the Kraken are probably going to have 2 or 3 guys on the board that they're going to have to choose from. And that's something I'm excited about, because not only does it mean that you have good players and you're able to get one that you value more, but I'm also just intrigued to see what Jason Botterill ends up doing with that selection.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's going to be listening plenty on this as well. And maybe there is somebody that someone values, 3rd or 4th on their board that they would be eager to give up a player to get. I still think the fit's going to happen on the other end, with the NHL player being the reason for the fit if it is traded. But there's so many possibilities here. I think that's really my big takeaway.
Yeah. And I think that's a real positive. And again, I'll go more in depth into all the prospects and everything tomorrow. For the deep dive. That was just kind of part of the plan anyway, with us doing it after the draft lottery and kind of where everything's going. But I think that this is still, it's still an okay spot for the Kraken. Don't be too worried about it. Is it as great as 1 or 2? Of course it's not, but it's still good.
Yeah, I think it's still fine. I see the team tweeted their reaction to just 8 is great. I see they're like, well, it's not exactly the greatest scenario for us. I think 8 is fine. 8 is good enough.
It is fine. Yeah. Again, it's not a disaster. It's not going to be the doom scenario that many people are going to try to make it out to be, because it's the internet and that's what people do.
Yeah.
But it's yeah, would you rather 6? Yeah, probably. But like, you always want to be higher, right? Even 7 would be better than 8. But you know what? 8's better than 9.
Yep. We can just go all through the
We can
numbers.
go
8's better than 9.
keep,
9's
keep
better than
going.
10, you know?
Yeah. You know,
Uh,
hey, real losers in all this, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh falls back 2 spots. Probably Kyle Dubas probably not thinking he had to fall back 2 spots coming into this.
yeah. Probably not. I know that's the thing with the live lottery odds and the drawing or whatever. You see, you're so close, like the Kraken, one number away from first, and it ends up being the worst case scenario for them. So it's just the roller coaster of emotions. I like the format. Again, didn't work out in the Kraken's favor today, but like I love that format.
Yes, I do too. But yeah, no, again, it's one where, yeah, there's going to be plenty of people trying to make it out to be a doom and gloom scenario. It's not. I'm going to talk to you guys plenty about good players that they can get. Again, Frindell could potentially be on the board at 8. Roger McQueen could be on the board at 8. Jackson Smith could be on the board at 8. There's so many options there. Carter Bear, if the team wants to be brave, you can do it, Kraken. Be brave, take Carter Bear.
I was wondering too, and actually I think
fun.
someone mentioned it in chat earlier. Like, does this open it up for Carter Bear where it's not too much of a reach?
I do think that it is. So that was another interesting thing from the Bob McKenzie article, was he said, talking to NHL teams, everybody still had him in their top 10.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's the case, then 8 isn't
that he talked about.
Every team has him in the top 10.
I don't think it is. And the quote from the scout about him was that they're not too worried about the injury, and also they felt like he was ahead of the development curve of some of the other prospects, particularly other prospects in that range, of Victor Eklund, a Roger McQueen, guys like that, which is exactly what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, which was Carter Bear already plays an NHL style game. If he didn't have this injury, I think he could have gone, 5-6 and potentially played the NHL next year. Like, that's how just kind of ready to go and built for all of this he is. So I think that there is a chance that the Kraken could end up going with the Carter Bear at number 8. I think it's one where, obviously the medicals are going to decide a lot, but it sounded like teams were more comfortable with Carter Bear's medicals than they are with Roger McQueen's medicals. Including in that Bob McKenzie article, one team has Roger McQueen completely off their board because of medicals already.
Wow. I think that certainly says something.
Yeah. So I think that that's an interesting one, but I take it as a positive that it sounds like teams internally aren't worried about Carter Bear. I think that that's a positive, and I think it's one where, picking 8th overall, you're not expecting that player to make an immediate impact for you. If Carter Bear is ready to go the following season, though, I think that that's a great timeline for the Kraken. He's going to be in state. You've already got multiple prospects on that Everett Silvertips team. Make it very easy for you to monitor progress and keep an eye on him while he's rehabbing, because he is going to basically miss all of next season. So I do think that would be a kind of another unique benefit of Seattle Kraken. The Kraken drafting him would just be the fact that he is close by. You could basically be as involved in the rehab process as you want to be with him, and in a way that I don't know that other teams would be able to do as efficiently, we'll say.
Yeah, no, I think the geographic element would certainly help. And I know that's something the development staff, they're not going to make a pick just based on that, but it is something they like, that they've talked to us about, that it's really nice to have, to be able to see that. And so I think also anybody you're drafting here, you're not expecting to be in the NHL next season. So it's already going to be a multi-year timeline. So that kind of just makes it a wash for anybody.
Exactly. So I think I would be definitely on board with Carter Bear at 8 personally. And Maddie asking what's the difference in injury between Bear and Roger McQueen. So Carter Bear's is relatively straightforward in the sense that it was just a torn Achilles, which is not great. It is one that is slightly worrying from a rehab and getting him back to 100% standpoint. But assuming everything goes the way it's supposed to, he'll be back and he will recover from something like that. And it has a low re-injury risk, which is also the most important thing. With Roger McQueen, it was the fact that he had multiple injuries this year, one of which was a back injury, and then the other was a significant shoulder injury, of which it was never really clear what the actual issue was with his shoulder. And it sounds like that's part of what's giving teams some pause around Roger McQueen. A lot of teams are really looking forward to talking with him at the combine and going over his medicals at the combine, because that shoulder injury, I don't think was ever really disclosed or talked about what actually happened with him there. And that is obviously a potentially worrying thing. And then any back injury is also very worrying for a kid who's 18 years old, but somebody who has the size of a Roger McQueen, because that, could be something that continues to be, something that's going to bother him throughout his NHL career. Do you want to invest a top 10 pick in somebody who's potentially going to be missing a lot of time for you, for the next decade? It's not something a bunch of teams find that attractive.
Yeah, it's a big risk for sure. I mean, I think we'll see. Whatever team takes McQueen is just someone who's gonna be so sold on the upside. Doesn't feel like a Kraken type of pick.
Does not at all. No, unless it's a Bottrell type pick. That would be the thing.
Yeah. Then we'll see, I guess.
Yeah.
But interesting there. Now, Dylan, who do you think had the worst draft lottery day? Okay, there's the Seattle Kraken, who do move down 2 spots. It is technically the worst case scenario for them, or the Vancouver Canucks, who do not move down any spots, but have their Twitter account hacked by crypto scammers.
It was definitely the Canucks. A lot of teams in the same boat as the Kraken, right? They dropped 2 spots. So you can't single out any one of those teams. You can absolutely single out the Vancouver Canucks as having a uniquely bad day.
Yeah, had to bring that up. Sorry, I know we're talking about actual serious draft stuff, but I had to mention that on here because I thought it was hilarious.
Just to answer, and I don't know if these will be like the last 2 questions we answer. Maybe I'll do a quick last call here for questions.
Yeah.
Andrew asking, is there a spot in the NHL draft that statistically produces the best players? Is it actually one? This feels like a better question for you, RJ, but certainly all of the pick models would say, yeah.
Yes, all of the pick models do say 1. Yes, the best success does come generally from first overall picks. And it kind of drops from there on. I don't think there's any, raises or whatever. If you factor in like all the drafts for, going back 20, 30 years, whatever, or more, I think it just goes straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Or then you might have little bumps somewhere, but it's more or less what you'd think.
Depending on how you tweak the sample size, you can sometimes end up with bumps, because like if a team does pick 8th and they end up hitting on a superstar in that spot, it can sometimes draw that out. But if you're looking at a normal sample size to get like a true thing, then yes, the value strictly follows what position you're picking in the draft. So that is, it goes as expected. And then Byron, do NHL teams do medical checks as part of drafts and or trades? I always feel like in baseball you hear pending physical, but it never seems to be a part of releases in the NHL. They do that in the NHL. That is part of the trading process, is that they are pending physical. They will occasionally say it on trade deadline day when they're talking about all of the trades. But I think in the NHL anyway, more so than in baseball, there are times where, as you're going through the trade process, I at least heard of this in the past. I don't know if it's still done this way, but back in the day, there was more like kind of gentlemen's agreements of like, okay, we're really looking at doing this trade or whatever, just to help kind of speed things along. Is there a medical thing we need to worry about, or what was the deal with this guy's injury last year when it was this, and then the other GM just discloses it, and it kind of helps smooth things over. But they still, at the end of the day, will always do the physical. There has been instances of trades, I think, getting canceled because of physicals. I can, of course, think of free agent signings and stuff in baseball a lot more clearly, because that stuff does pop up when they're actually doing the physical, less so than in hockey because of that information disclosure that they'll tend to do. But I do think that it's happened where trades have ended up being canceled because of a failed physical.
Yeah, it is more rare because, like you said, I think GMs will just candidly talk about it. And in NHL world with the GMs, your word is your bond and all that. And generally, they are pretty upfront with that sort of thing, because if they're not and there's something they hide, you can really lose the ability for other GMs to want to do any kind of business with you going forward. So it does kind of police itself there. But yeah, there are rare situations, or where even a team isn't aware of something before a full physical, where it will derail something.
Yeah. And then it's obviously part of the draft process as well. That's part of what happens at the combine. And I know Maddie asked when the combine is. It's early to mid-June, I believe. Maybe mid-June, with the draft being in late June, if I'm remembering correct. It happens a lot closer to the draft than, say, the NFL combine happens to the NFL draft, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I think last year it was June 3rd to 7th. This year it'll be June 1st to 7th.
Okay, so yeah, it's just earlier in the draft month then.
Yeah.
But that's absolutely part of what takes place at the combine is they come in, they do all the medical testing, and all of that stuff. They do condition testing too to check what condition they're in. We always hear about the horror
VO2
stories
max.
for some of the guys doing the VO2 max test. Yeah, but it is interesting. And then Maddie, what happens for a guy like Carter Bear with the combine since he's injured? He'd participate in the things that he can participate in. I think they have like grip strength readings and all of that stuff. He's probably going to be fine for that upper body testing,
which has been theorized that the Kraken really care about. They draft a lot of players with high right hand grip strength, so good handshakes.
Exactly. So he'll participate in that stuff, and then otherwise the big thing is just going to be bringing in his medical records, the surgery records, all of that kind of stuff, what his rehab plan is with his doctors, and talking to other teams about that.
Yep. And then Schultz with this question, is Nye's offer sheet worth sacrificing pick number 8 plus others? Of course, that's a good question. With the Nye's offer sheet, or if they were to offer sheet anybody, those draft picks will start with next year, because that would be after July 1st, which is post draft. So it'd be the next available draft pick. So any picks that are in this NHL draft 2025 would not be used for an offer sheet.
Yes. That being said, RJ, if you knew in glimpsed into the future, would you do it?
What if they were picking 8 again next year?
Yeah.
Otherwise?
Yeah. Just like, do you value Matthew Knies as an 8th overall pick? I mean,
I think so. Yeah, I think the odds that you're gonna get a Matthew Knies or better, or like significantly better player than Matthew Knies with the 8th overall pick, I probably lower than I would just take the sure thing in Knies personally, especially because he's not that. Although you do miss the ELC years.
You miss the ALC years, and I do,
and he's 22. So like, I think that's young enough that I would do it.
I want to see Matthew Knies away from the Leafs before I would kind of for sure say that.
Also, because if they're picking 8th overall next year, that the season was also a failure, right?
Yeah,
you want to do something to try and change the result.
Yes.
Like if they're picking 8th overall next year, I'm sorry, but that is awful.
Yeah.
Like that means you didn't accomplish anything one way or the
obviously,
other.
obviously. Yeah. This was just
so I would try and just change. I would look into the future and be like, oh no, we've got to avoid that. Do something else. So yes, I would do it.
Yeah, no. Although next year's draft is deeper, so
the 8th overall pick could really help you a lot more. So I don't know, maybe
it is a tough call. It's a tough call, but yeah, just wanted to ask. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining us for the lottery. I know it didn't go the way that we were all hoping it would, but Kraken are still in a good spot at pick 8, and excited to kind of go over everything tomorrow about prospects and kind of maybe what rankings we have and what other teams are kind of what it seems like the consensus rankings are for the guys that are going to be in that range for the Kraken.
Yeah, no, it's going to be real fun going over that. I always love learning about the draft class and everything with you. And in a way, I think it's actually going to be more interesting and fun to kind of cover the lead up to than even if the Kraken won, right? If the Kraken won the lottery, I mean, we're very excited about it, of course, but we're only really talking about 2 players.
Yeah.
Versus now there's a whole bunch of guys that we can look at, a whole bunch of possibilities, and just really interesting stuff for us to explore, including not even using the pick and trading it. And so we can see kind of who's out there for that as well. Because I think if they win on the top 2, that pick is being made. It's not being traded. So just lots of possibilities. It adds to just another more eventful summer than we thought, which just kind of continues.
Yeah, no, I'm super pumped to be able to really kind of dive deep into all of these prospects over the next month and a half, and excited for like the combine, which normally not too excited about, but I think in this scenario it makes the combine interesting for the Kraken, and certainly excited for like the next prospect chat too, where we can really dive into the video on some of these guys, and
can't wait for that.
The ones that I really like. Really, the next 2 prospect chats will be able to do that, so that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks everybody so much for joining us for this one. I really appreciate it, and we will see you all tomorrow for the deep dive.